Presenter, Senator Corbett.
Thank you very much, Mr. Chair, and welcome. I'm here to present Senate Bill 56, dealing with the California Apprenticeship Council, which I'm sure the members of the committee are well aware of. The Division of Apprenticeship Standards oversees apprenticeship programs in California, but has few tools to assess these programs and ensure that they're meeting the needs of the building industry and its workers. Senate Bill 56 makes changes intended to improve accountability. The bill would require applying organizations to submit a plan and establish guidelines for program approval or expansion. It would require programs to communicate with enrolled apprentices about their progress in the program, and it restructures the audit process to focus on new and expanding programs and where there are indicators of problems with any programs. It also ensures that the California Apprenticeship Council is representative of the trades involved in apprenticeship programs. These apprenticeship programs provide a viable and valuable pathway to employment, but weak oversight and data make it difficult to determine if they are functioning as well as they could be. A well-trained and relevant workforce is key to our shared goal of creating new and sustainable jobs in California, and SB 56 is intended to help that goal. I have with me today my sponsor, the State Construction and Building Trades Council, and also the State Labor Federation is here as well. And thank you very much for your positive consideration of this measure.
Thank you. Witnesses in support?
Mr. Chair, Member Cesar Diaz on behalf of the State Building Trades Council. Our apprenticeship programs and are jointly sponsored with Labor and Management spent over $100 million annually on apprenticeship. This is a massive investment. Public works projects require the use of apprentices. The state provides a small portion, but a significant portion as well, towards apprenticeship training and investment for ensuring partnerships with local education agencies, such as K through 12 or community colleges. The state investment in this should be rightfully protected and ensure that the programs are operating to the maximum quality and highest standards possible. That graduates are actually graduating from apprenticeship programs. That if there's going to be an application for new apprenticeship programs or expanding a program, that they have employer commitments, that they demonstrate that they have the facilities, and that they also have a responsibility to the apprentice themselves to ensure that they're providing reports on their status towards graduation and becoming a journey person in the building and construction trades. This bill gives us that audit trigger mechanism to ensure that programs, both union and non-union, are operating to the maximum, the highest standards. And we believe this is great public policy because it impacts all programs within the Building and Construction Trades Council. And so we respectfully urge your aye vote in this measure.
Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Chair, members of the committee. For the record, Mitch Seaman with the California Labor Federation, and we concur with the comments of the previous two speakers. We think that this bill will take a strong program and make it work even better, so we urge your support.
Other witnesses?
Mr. Chairman, members of the committee, Shane Gustman on behalf of the Teamsters. This bill will provide some much-needed accountability in the apprenticeship programs, and we support the bill.
Patrick Henning on behalf of the California State Council of Labor in support for the comments we heard earlier.
Any other witnesses in support? Any witnesses in opposition? Do we have questions from the committee? Senator Runner?
Is there currently a problem that you're aware of that you're doing this bill to fix?
Yes, and I'm going to let Mr. Diaz speak to that. There have been some problems. This improves accountability, but I'll let him speak to the specifics.
Absolutely. Right now, the current standards that are associated with an application process at the the California Apprenticeship Council, they can basically approve any program, a newly or expanded program, depending on who's on board in terms of the makeup of the council. And we believe that while that's still a possibility in terms of who the appointments are to the council, this would give them the stronger accountability measures to ensure that whatever program is newly expanded or created will actually do what their application states, is actually provide training and graduate apprentices. So the ratio that we set is that if a program falls below a certain standard of 50%, then that would trigger an audit. Or if there were some meritorious complaints on a newly and expanded program, that they would trigger an audit too, to make sure that the program is operating effectively and to the highest standards possible. There have been programs that have not graduated apprentices. You know, they have very minimal apprentices, but they don't graduate one apprentice. You know, that's a...
They can do that now, right? They have the authority to shut them down now.
They have the authority, but it will take 5 years for them to actually get to an audit. So that program can operate for 5 years. And the Division of Apprenticeship Standards doesn't have really that authority mechanism now to do that. So even though technically they can do that, they're seldom shut down.
Well, my question, I guess, still remains the same. Is there a specific problem in a certain area that requires this other than, as you say, more accountability?
It's more accountability and higher standards.
No
Absolutely.
particular problem right now that we see. Is there additional cost that will be imposed on the DAR?
I'm sorry, ma'am.
Yes.
Senator, there is a problem, because there are apprenticeship programs that are operating now that have access to public works projects, but they never graduate apprentices. So a person could go through a program and never journey out, meaning that they'll never get to that certain wage standard that they're working towards. So they'll either get fired and rehired and then put into an apprenticeship program as a second-year or third-year apprentice and never reach that goal. So there's abuse of the apprenticeship system, gaming by unscrupulous contractors that don't seek training as a method to provide a qualified workforce on a public works construction project, and they'll game the system by employing apprentices but not paying them the proper wages and not allowing that apprentice to reach the graduation status.
Well, just a comment here. I think with SB 56 will just be kind of another tool for unions to further cut competition in that arena for merit shops and others that are out there. So I'm concerned about that issue as well.
Mr. Chair?
Yes, Senator Leno.
So it should be.
I would file this bill under regulatory reform.
Yes.
This is about ending duplication and streamlining the entire process. And I know you've been working on this for a few years, as then Assemblywoman Evans had before you, and I'm happy to move the bill.
Thank you very much, Senator Leno. May I make one last comment? The Labor Committee recently held a very thorough hearing on workforce training, and it was remarkable what we found. The state puts $5 billion into workforce training programs every single year, including things like apprenticeship training. And we found in this hearing that there was many areas where accountability was lacking, where goals towards training a workforce that meets the needs of this state are not there and not attainable because of the programs we have. So this is just another area where if we are funding these programs, we should ensure that we have the highest accountability, we have the information we need so we can meet the standards for a trained workforce in the state of California. I wish you all would have been able to attend this hearing that we have. The information from the hearing should be available shortly, but it will be very interesting reading for all of you as we deal with the struggles we have with our budget going forward. Thank you. Please vote aye.
Thank you, Senator Corbett, for this good bill. Chair recommends an aye vote, and we have a motion from Senator Leno.
No opposition was filed at all.
Roll call, please.
The motion is due pass and re-refer to approps. Liu?
Aye.
Wyland?
No.
DeSaulnier?
Aye.
Leno?
Aye.
Padilla? Runner?
No.
Yee.
It's okay. Thank you very much, members.
Ayes 4, noes 2. That measure passes.
Okay. Now we have SB 104. We've received a formal request for Charles Wright to present on behalf of Senator Steinberg on SB 104. So go ahead.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Senate Bill 104 is Senator Steinberg's third attempt to give the hardest working individuals in California another option to organize themselves within a union. SB 104 permits agricultural employees to select their labor representatives by submitting a petition to the ALRB, Agricultural Labor Relations Board, along with representation cards signed by majority of the bargaining unit. Once the validity of the cards is confirmed by the ALRB, the labor organization would be certified as the exclusive bargaining representative. Opponents to this measure will say they oppose in part because they believe in the sanctity of the secret ballot. This bill does not eliminate the secret ballot process as a method to select labor representation. It simply adds this new process as an option. The assumption is that all participants in these critical elections are on an even playing field. The assumption is that the individuals voting in these elections conducted by the ALRB are free to contemplate the pros and cons of their decision and that they are free from the weighted influence and feelings of intimidation from their employers leading up to the election. There are countless stories of farm workers who are told that if they vote to join a union, that they will be out of a job the next day. They are told that they will be reported to immigration, and they are told their family members will lose their jobs. This is a simple, sensible piece of legislation giving farm workers another option to choose a collective bargaining representative. I ask for your aye vote.
Witnesses in support?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman and members. I'm Assemblymember Luis Alejo, and I'm very honored to be here to speak on behalf in support of this bill. But I also want to thank the people standing behind me. These are the hardworking men and women who toil in the field throughout California, and they're here today to be part of this historic legislation, the people who put food on our tables, and I'm glad they came here to also stand in support of this legislation. I certainly want to thank Senator Steinberg for taking leadership on this bill. And as you may know, I represent the second largest agricultural assembly district in the state. More fruits and vegetables are grown in my district than anywhere else in the country. This includes the Salinas Valley, Santa Clara Valley, San Juan Valley, and the Pajaro Valleys of California. That means I'm responsible for representing a very large farm worker population as well. And as a son and as a grandson of migrant farm workers, this is very personal to me as well. My grandparents came to this country during the Bracero program to work in throughout the Salinas Valleys, the Central Valleys, Santa Clara Valleys to work in agriculture. And I remember that they endured very tough conditions. They lacked job security. They worked under very extreme working conditions. They were exposed to toxic pesticides, which took a toll on their own health, and they lacked health benefits. And I remember how important it was when my family became a union family. It improved their quality of life, their standard of living. They had better wages, greater job security. But the conditions that my family endured decades ago still exist today. Farm workers are among the lowest paid workers throughout California. They lack access to health care. The education of their children is disrupted when they have to move place to place to pick our crops. And I know that very well. I used to work as a legal aid attorney representing farm workers throughout the Monterey Bay region, and these conditions continue to exist for our families. My mission is to help our families become union families, to bring dignity to our workers that put food on our tables. And it is during moments like this that I remember that quote by Robert Kennedy, who said that where unions are strong, the cause of social progress is advanced, and where unions are weak, our whole society suffers. I want to thank you again for allowing me to testify, and I also want to again thank Senator Steinberg for bringing this bill forward on behalf of our farm workers of California, and I ask for your aye vote.
Thank you. Other witnesses?
Thank you. Good morning, Chair Liu and members of the committee. My name is Mario Martinez. I'm General Counsel for the United Farm Workers of America. It's an honor to be here today with you. We're grateful to Senator Steinberg, whose unwavering leadership on this issue has inspired us to continue our work. Senator Steinberg is a genuine farm worker champion, and for that we are grateful. We would like to note that all of you had an opportunity to vote on a very similar bill in 2007 and 2009. In fact, Senator Padilla carried a bill in 2007 that is very similar to the bill we are presenting today. It is not every day that farm workers have the opportunity to stand up to wrongs committed against them. They are often targeted because of their immigration status, they are often cheated out of their wages, and they have no voice at their jobs. They live in constant fear of deportation and retaliation. What we have also learned from our work in Sacramento is that it is not every day that elected officials, including governors, are willing to confront big business or industry on behalf of the poor, the exploited, and the voiceless, and to give those workers a tool to protect themselves. The state is broke and unable to help those most in need. This week you are voting on cuts affecting the sick, elderly, and the poor. So we know the state cannot put enough money into the ALRB or Cal OSHA to protect farm workers and enforce the laws on the books. And we know we cannot rely on the court system to fix the problem. Sadly, since 2004, at least 15 farm workers have died in the fields from heat illness because they had no voice and no protections. In fact, this morning a judge will consider a plea deal in the manslaughter case of 17-year-old Maria Isabel Vasquez Jimenez, who died in the Great Fields in 2008. She was killed because of her employer's intentional disregard of the heat regulations and the state's lack of enforcement of those laws. This morning's plea deal embodies all that is wrong with our system. Those responsible for this death had been fined in 2006, but Cal OSHA never collected the fine and did not ensure the law was being followed. Maria Isabel was killed 2 years later, and those responsible may only be sentenced to community service. Community service for manslaughter is a disservice to the cause of justice. So instead of offering farm workers one more legislative, procedural, and meaningless remedy, we ask you and the governor to consider allowing farm workers to protect themselves. We have been on this legislative journey for the past 5 years. Because Governor Brown has already afforded state employees in the Department of Food and Agriculture, in every public irrigation district, and in the ALRB itself, a similar right, the UFW knows that Governor Brown understands and appreciates the power of that right. We are confident Governor Brown will not veto this bill, the way former Governor Schwarzenegger did. Farm workers are a simple people. They are a humble people. They work hard. They break their backs and hands to earn an honest living. Farm workers fuel one of the largest industries in the world and feed a great nation. They are capable of protecting themselves if given the tools to do so. We are asking for more than your support today. We are asking you to join Pro Tem Steinberg in using your power as legislators and as a legislative body to make sure this bill gets signed into law. Thank you.
Thank you. Other witnesses in support?
Mr. Chair and members, Caitlin Vega for the California Labor Federation, also here in support. We have supported this bill every year because we understand that most workers face incredible intimidation when they try to form unions and try to speak out about their working conditions, but this is nowhere so true as it is for farm workers. So we think that a fair process for trying to get together with coworkers and make changes to improve their lives is essential for farm workers in this state. I too am from an agricultural community. My mother-in-law has worked as a farm worker for 35 years and was able to join a union and was able to really transform her life and offer a better life to her son. And that's what this is really about. It's about trying to offer more to the next generation, and that's why this bill is so important. Thank you.
Mr. Chair, members, Deanna Furman on behalf of the California Nurses Association, we too support this bill.
Brooks Ellis on behalf of the United Nurses Association of California and Union of Healthcare Professionals in support. Thank you.
Shane Gussman on behalf of the Teamsters and the United Food and Commercial Workers in support.
Patrick Hang on behalf of the Laborers Union in support.
Any other witnesses in support? Any? Yes. So I've been informed we have a lot of farm workers here today. If they want to stand up so the committee can see them and recognize them for their service. Thank you for being here. witnesses in opposition?
Good morning, Mr. Chairman, members of the committee. My name is Barry Bedwell. I'm president of the California Grape and Tree Fruit League. I want to thank you for the opportunity to talk to you this morning. Some points I would like to make. First of all, the characterization of this piece of legislation as an alternative to the secret ballot is simply an illusion at best. I think when you look at the detail, and once you had a situation where you had 50% or more of the people signing cards, you would not ever see a secret ballot election. In essence, this removes the very basic right of the farm worker to participate in a secret ballot election. Secondly, the argument has been made that this legislation is necessary to protect against intimidation from the employer. It makes no potential mention of the situation of intimidation from the union. Clearly, a situation where you have purely card check is going to set up a situation where intimidation would almost be automatically expected in most instances. The reality of why intimidation is not covered by the current law has not been properly addressed. We've always brought up the situation that if there are unfair labor practice provisions, if there is intimidation occurring, why isn't the current law addressing that? That is what we should be discussing rather than taking away the very fundamental right of a secret ballot. Also, as you look, when you look at any other means to determine the true intent of a farm worker, I've heard no credible argument of anything other than a situation where you can write down your feeling without someone looking over your shoulder. We feel that the instance where the argument has been made by organized labor that somehow the employee has been intimidated during that process, we would argue that in fact, once the employee understands what he has signed in terms of the card and begins to question the value of union membership, then they make their true decision. So I think it's important when we talk about very much the need for respect and dignity for the farm workers, we need to start with the secret ballot and see what we can do to always preserve that and to make sure the true intent of the worker is known. Also, let me just say I find it incredibly ironic that at a time when our state is facing such fiscal crisis and challenges, and we have individuals talking about the need of the people to vote, to make their wishes known. That's what we're talking about here, the need of the farm workers to make their true intent known. We should do all we can to preserve the secret ballot. And as such, I would ask that you oppose this bill. Thank you.
Good morning, Mr. Chairman, members of the committee. I'm Brian Little with the California Farm Bureau Federation. We represent 75,000 family farm operators and employers located throughout California. We grow a lot of food that goes on your dinner table every night, and I appreciate the opportunity to be able to come here and speak with you today about SB 104. Our members are very concerned about SB 104 in part for the reasons that Mr. Bedwell laid out, and I would like to associate myself with his remarks and add a few things. When you look at SB 104, I think it's kind of interesting that it creates a significant and severe new penalty for employer unfair labor practices and yet doesn't impose a similar penalty on union unfair labor practices. One wonders what the purpose could be of such a potentially unbalanced remedy when under the National Labor Relations Act, most unfair labor practice remedies are about making the employee whole as opposed to punishing one party or the other and coming out to a fair outcome. It's also interesting to note that under SB 104, a card check regimen can be used to certify a union but can't be used to decertify a union. One wonders why what's good for one party is not equally effective for the other. The problem with card check and the problem with the way card check will work in the real world is that the process of employees signing cards is going to happen outside the purview and the supervision of the Agricultural Labor Relations Board in living rooms and convenience stores and laundromats and schools and other places where farm workers and their families gather in the evenings and during their off hours with no referee present in the room to decide whether or not intimidation is occurring and to try to prevent that from occurring in the first place. That's why we prefer a remedy with a supervised secret ballot election. And on behalf of the members of the California Farm Bureau, I would urge you to oppose SB 104 because in most cases that will not be the case in the future. Thank you.
Other witnesses in opposition?
Mr. Chair and members, Dave Puglia, Western Growers Association, also in opposition.
Mike Velasco, Wine Institute, we also oppose.
Crystal Jack on behalf of the Alliance of Western Milk Producers, California Citrus Mutual, Nisei Farmers League, and Western Agricultural Processors Association, also in opposition.
Jennifer Barrera on behalf of Cal Chamber, we're also in opposition.
Mr. Chairman, members, John Handley, California Independent Grocers Association, always also in opposition.
Good morning. Randy Knott with the California Hotel and Lodging Association, also in opposition.
Mr. Chair and members, Kendra Dijogo with the Gualco Group on behalf of the California Association of Wine Grape Growers and the Agricultural Council of California, also in opposition.
Any other witnesses? Questions from the committee? Senator Weiland?
There goes. As I think was mentioned, this bill has come before us a few times, and this is was Labor's number one priority, I think, when the new administration was elected. I think the problem with it is that, well, actually there's two problems, and one with the earlier bill as well. I think it's really important when we have these sorts of things that affect companies, or in this case growers. I'd like to hear from someone who actually grows food or someone who actually builds something. You know, and I understand the lobbyist point of view, but I think we need to hear from people who've actually gone through it. I think all of us are familiar with the National Labor Relations Act, which was a huge and significant piece of legislation. It created the National Labor Relations Board, and there's a ton of case law that's occurred since then. I think one of the absolute centerpieces of that legislation was a secret ballot, and the rules regarding intimidation, every kind of change you can think of, are really clear. If they're not being enforced, then we need to fix the Agricultural Labor Relations Board. I've personally gone through 3 union elections on the ground. And the first thing you learn is you can't do anything. You can't give someone a raise. You can't promise anything. And I think most employers have done that, adhere to that, and those who don't usually get fined. In my experience, there are employers who aren't that good, and they usually lose those elections. And frankly, they deserve to lose those elections. I believe in the unionization process and the ability to form unions. I think it's really important. Every single democracy that I can think of has some form of union ability to form unions. The concern that I have, which has been expressed, is, and why they want card check, is card check's easy. Card check is easy. As been mentioned, and even more so in this case, it is really easy to convince someone to sign those cards. It's the campaign afterwards that makes the difference. And these are like campaign rules. There may in fact be, and there may in fact be more among farm workers, intimidation. I don't know that. If that's the case, the ALRB needs to really come down hard on them. The issue of, and I assume it's in the past, exposure to pesticides or poor working conditions, that's Cal OSHA's job. We need to get Cal OSHA, and I would support, if there's data to demonstrate it, more money for Cal OSHA to do that. I think that's especially true for anyone in a job or work where it's physical, and I've done a lot of physical work, some of which is dangerous, and lifting things, working with saws, all that stuff. I think it's really important for them to be there. I just think the underlying thesis of this removes the fundamental democratic aspect of it. And I think an example of that comes from an LA Times article and editorial in March of 27. Supporters of unionization shouldn't be able to pressure unwilling, or hesitant employees to join a union. And you don't have to be a critic of unions to recognize that the card check system invites such abuses. I have no problem whatsoever with unions winning elections, as long as they're fair. But I think they need to be an election. With a card check, it's not only the element of intimidation, it's the element of just one side presenting a case. It would be as if you had a trial where only one side presents the case. So I think for those reasons, I can't support it. It would be very helpful, I would say, to the representatives of these various organizations if you had at least one or two of your members who've gone through this process to tell us what it was like. So I understand and appreciate what you're trying to do. This is hard work. It's been done throughout our history. Every one of my grandparents grew up on farms, and the work was hard, which is why people left farms. But it's not something that we haven't all done. And there was unfortunately no OSHA and nothing to help the workplace conditions then. If they can unionize and get that done now, more power to them. But I think it needs to be under the existing approach.
Other questions? Senator Runner?
Just a couple of comments. I do appreciate Assemblyman Alejo for coming and bringing the workers that you did today. I'm concerned about the oversight. Having served a little stint on the ALRB board, that helps really prevent coercion and intimidation, that this will not be able to, the oversight will not be there for the ALRB because it's done in people's homes and backyards or wherever they end up signing those cards. And the provision also that it could be signed up to a year earlier. There are people that won't even work for the company by the time it actually becomes a union. So I have concerns in that regard as well. So just a couple of comments about that. And, you know, if the violation is there for the employer, then it needs to be there for the unions as well. So that's my comment. Thank you.
Any other questions? Senator Leno.
I think we're all struggling to find this delicate balance of fairness, and there also needs to be consideration of what the current playing field looks like, which is hardly balanced. And I think the reminder of the 17-year-old farm worker whose life ended so abruptly on a very overheated day when she was in the fields, even with state law in place, that was to provide for proper shelter from the sun and drinking water that was not available, that we have to recognize that it's just not a balanced playing field now. But I did want the proponents to just respond to the suggestion from the opposition that this, in fact, would be a de facto end of the alternative ballot, and that in that case it would be a poison pill. In fact, it's not intended to be an alternative.
As drafted, the author believes that it does clearly offer it as an option. It does not get rid of the secret ballot. It does not say that this is a preferred option. It just offers another option. So I believe the sponsor and the author don't believe that it's a poison pill.
Thank you. I would move the bill.
Senator Wyland has a question.
Just very briefly, and this is not related to this, but it would improve the lives of farm workers a lot. I wish farm workers would join with others to get water down to the lower valley. There is a provision, I understand, in the species protection law when there's undue economic hardship for that to happen. To me, it is, I don't want to overstate it. I was going to say criminal. It is a tragedy, the unemployment and the implications of that, with an extreme decision by the court. They need water down there. Those farm workers need water down there, and I hope you all help us work on getting that done.
Thank you. We have a motion by Senator Leno. Roll call, please.
The motion is due pass. We refer to approves. Lou?
Aye.
Wyland?
No.
DeSaulnier?
Aye.
Leno?
Aye.
Padilla?
Aye.
Runner?
No.
Yee?
Aye.
Has 5 votes. That measures out.
Okay. Thank you. Committee is adjourned.
Thank you, Senators.
Thank you.